Hello, I'm back with another episode in this series, and I haven't done one in a while, and I do enjoy theory crafting what changes I'd make to a faction in order to balance it. So today I'm going to be looking at the wizards, and I won't repeat my introduction to the series in this episode, as if you've seen the others, you'll be familiar with that by now, so we'll just jump straight into it. I'm going to be suggesting two lots of changes in this video. Firstly, what I think they would do if they were to reprint the wizards today, and secondly, what I would do if I were reprinting the wizards. So starting with what I think AUG and the game designers would do, Archmage would be moved up to a power 5, and the ongoing ability would become a talent. Archmage being a power 4 is a legacy of the core set, and a concern about the power level of drawing cards. Changing the ability is just to bring it up to date with terminology and the wording. Chronomage would become a power 4, and this turn would be removed from the card as that is now superfluous. Finally, Enchantress will become a power 3. You could change this to you may draw a card, but I don't think it really matters outside of very niche situations. And really, I think that's all they'd do if they were to reprint the Wizards. The Wizards were one of those factions to get a Titan in the Titan Event Kit pack, and this was primarily to help with their below average power. I think the common consensus is that the talent of the Arcane Protector is a bonus, but that wasn't the issue with the faction, that was the lack of power. So by increasing the power of the minions to a normal faction power structure, that creates an additional 6 power, which is what the Arcane Protector was there to make up. So sticking with the Arcane Protector, let's move to what I would do. I was really interested in the concept of once you play a certain number of cards you achieve a bonus, and obviously with Arcane Protector being given that on-play condition, it's one that the Wizards can reach, but it requires effective sequencing and a little bit of setup to get there. And I think that concept is a strong one. It rewards good play. Having factions that are harder to play well, I think, is a good thing. Of course, not every faction should be hard to play, but certainly some of them. It helps to develop players rather than just every faction being linear and easy to play. There can be payoffs for those players who are prepared to put in the time with a certain faction to get really skilled with them. In terms of what I would do then, I would still change the Archmage, Chronomage and Enchantress, as I've already mentioned, and I wouldn't change the Neophyte. So I'll start with the actions that I'd change the wording of, but not fundamentally change. First, Mystic Studies, I would change it to draw a card, then draw an additional card for each other card you've played this turn. As a baseline, it's a 1 card draw 1, which is pretty awful. If you play your minions first, it's a regular Mystic Studies, so a draw 2. However, now with this change, the ceiling is much higher. At what point do you need the hand refresh? Can you plan out your turn so that Mystic Studies is a draw 4 or draw 5? It creates a flexible payoff that you can activate when you want to, but it's only limited by how you're setting up that payoff. You'll see with another one of my changes a little bit later on that the additional draw that Mystic Studies can now bring does balance out, as I will be removing one of the other Wizards draw cards. Next up is Portal. Now Portal is already quite a strong card, so this one could potentially be considered to be a nerf, which in the context of the other changes I'm proposing I don't actually think is a bad thing. I propose changing Portal to, for each card you played this turn, including this one, reveal the top card of your deck. Place any number of minions revealed into your hand, return the other cards to the top of your deck in any order. Now you may think this is awful, but remember that Portal in its original state is quite strong, and you have to consider this change in the context of increasing the power of the Wizard's minions, as well as the other changes you'll see that I'm proposing. And this doesn't have a ceiling like the original one does. If you set this up well enough to be a big payoff at the end of your turn, you could potentially look at the top 6 or even more cards. Again, I'm playing into this concept of sequencing and being rewarded for planning your turns. Now, onto the cards that I would change more substantially. The 2 cards that stand out to me as a bit out of place in the faction are Sacrifice and Mass Enchantment. Now, I absolutely love Mass Enchantment, it's such a fun card, and when you hit something outrageous of it, it can be really swingy in the game. But this is the only Wizards card that can interact with other players. It's horrendously RNG and swingy for all players involved, and it's a card that's only really good at 4 players when you've got a lot more options. The common complaint that's often thrown at the Wizards is, well, what's the payoff for all the draw and the extra plays that they bring? Musketeers, for example, string together long plays and draw a lot of cards, but they're at least working towards that big base break. Wizards lack a payoff. We often see big finisher cards in factions that provide, X amount of power and are what the faction's working towards. So my suggested change to Mass Enchantment would be to give Wizards their finishing card. Choose one of your minions, it gains +1 power until the end of the turn for each card you played this turn, including this one. Sacrifice now, and similar to Mass Enchantment, this one really feels out of place, both mechanically and thematically. It's the only card in the faction that can interact with the board, and that's only your own board state. And then thematically, I would maybe associate Warlocks or Dark Magicians with Sacrificial or Dark Magic, but that's not really the flavour that I get from the Wizards. So I had a few choices here. I'd initially thought about a recovery card just for actions, utilising the same payoff mechanic that I've been applying to some of the other cards, but then that wouldn't really make sense as the Wizards currently have no recovery, and it may make the faction even, too strong giving them recovery. So then I thought about what they were known for, which is draw and extra action plays, and one thing the core set is lacking is play on base actions. So I initially thought about doubling down on that further through a play on base action, but then all that does is amplify what the Wizards are already good and bad at. So I went with a more thematic effect. Wizards are good with spells, which in this game could translate to actions, so let's throw in an easy play on base action which protects your minions on this base from other players' actions. It's not a broken card by any means that would drastically increase the power level of the faction, but it's a very easy effect on an easy to play card. It adds one more play on base action to the core set, which is a good thing, and it's an additional thing that the Wizards can bring to the table for any partner faction. Although I did change Wildlife Preserve for the dinosaurs from actions to all effects, I think this one is fine as it feels a bit more thematic, and in general making this and Portal worse does help to balance some of the other more powerful changes that I'm making. So just to summarise, I think if they were reprinting the Wizards today, they would change the power of Archmage, Chronomage and Enchantress, as well as some of the wording changes, and changing Archmage to a talent. I would do the same, but I'd also change Mystic Studies and Portal, so that they included the new payoff mechanic that benefits, sequencing and planning ahead. I'd remove Mass Enchantment, and I'd add a one-time Power Boost payoff card, and I'd remove Sacrifice and add a play on base action that protects minions from actions. So what do you think of these changes? How would you bring the Wizards up to date with the modern day? Would you do anything more than what I think the game designers would do? Let me know down in the comments below, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.